Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 13 must-start and must-sit wide receivers for the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, cool graphics going to fly onto the screen right now. Please do so at NotoriousFantasy. We're going to be talking about BetMGM a little bit later. They have a great offer for you. Bet $10 on any pregame World Cup moneyline bet, and you receive $200 in free bets if any team scores during the World Cup, which is guaranteed to happen. So check that out in the video description. We're going to be talking about it a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 13 must-start and must-sit wide receivers. We begin with my number one must-start wide receiver of the week, Garrett Wilson of the New York Jumbo Jets, going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota this week. Last week, up against a subpar, and honestly, subpar might be a nice way to put things, a absolutely atrocious Chicago Bears defense. Wilson was the wide receiver number 2 on the week in half PPR, having 5 receptions on 8 targets for 95 yards, and not 1 but 2 touchdowns in that game. He also had 1 rush for -1 yards. Now, this matchup up against the Minnesota Vikings is also relatively easy because the Vikings defense ranks 27th in pass defense via DVOA. I really do believe this will be yet another big game out of rookie Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson was very impressive at points in this season. The biggest issue for Garrett Wilson was the fact that Zach Wilson was handicapping him. The fact that Zach Wilson is so fucking bad at points in the season and can't read a children's book if they were a defense. Garrett Wilson struggled because of that. It was not because Garrett Wilson wasn't able to get open. It's not because these other wide receivers on the team are better than Garrett Wilson. It was because of the quarterback play. And now with Magic Mike White under center in a positive matchup up against the Minnesota Vikings defense, I told you guys last week, I fully expected a smash out of Garrett Wilson, and I fully expect it yet again up against the Minnesota Vikings this week. Next up, we got Christian Watson, wide receiver of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Chicago Bears defense in Chicago. Week 12 at the Philadelphia Eagles, up against one of the premier pass defenses in the NFL. Now, I know the Eagles' run defense has been pretty subpar as of recently, but they are legitimately one of the best pass-ranked defenses in the NFL. And in that game, Christian Watson continued on his heater as the wide receiver number 8 in half PPR, having 4 receptions on 6 targets for 110 yards and a touchdown. 3 straight games, 3 straight heaters in a row where he was amazing. 6 touchdowns in the last 3 games, with at least 1 touchdown in every single game. Again, I talked about it with Garrett Wilson. The Chicago Bears defense is atrocious. Bottom of the barrel against the pass. They rank 31st in pass defense DVOA. I will continue to ride the hot streak of Christian Watson until the wheels fall off the metaphorical bus of Christian Watson. I know, Nick, Aaron Rodgers is going to be banged up going into this game. Nick, maybe Aaron Rodgers won't play. Well, Aaron Rodgers said he was going to play, and I just fully expect him to play. When he says that, I think he's going to go. Now, again, he might be banged up, but ultimately, it doesn't take Aaron Rodgers playing at MVP caliber to throw the ball to Christian Watson when he's wide fucking open. And Christian Watson has been dominant in the red zone. He made an amazing play to score that touchdown in that game with Jordan Love last week up against a tough Philadelphia Eagles defense. And again, the Chicago Bears defense is nut low in the NFL. They're absolutely fucking atrocious, and I expect another big game out of Mr. Christian Watson. Again, we're going to continue to bang the drum for this guy, continue to talk him up until he ends up failing, and this matchup seems way too easy for him to fail this week. Next up, we got the final must-start wide receiver before we pivot into the must-sits, and that is Zay Jones, wide receiver of the Jacksonville Jaguars, going up against the Detroit Lions in Detroit. Now, some people might be thinking, Nick, Zay Jones had a great game last week. I don't think he can do it again. Up against the Baltimore Ravens at home in Jacksonville in a huge win for the Jacksonville Jaguars, Zay Jones stepped up in a big way as the wide receiver number 5 in half PPR on the week, having 11 receptions on 14 targets for 145 yards. Now, Some people might be thinking, Nick, Zay Jones isn't all that good. I don't think he can do it again, even though he's going up against the Lions. Now, the Lions sneakily have a decent pass defense, ranked 19th in pass defense via DVOA. Again, I tend to believe in what most of DVOA is saying. Their stats, it all makes sense. But I think the Lions defense is a little bit worse than that. Zay Jones has had back-to-back Michael Jordan 96-97 games with over 10 targets. He's played in 10 games on the season, and in 6 of them, he has had 8+ targets. Zay Jones is legit, and this matchup up against the Detroit Lions is making my mouth salivate. So I am a big fan of Zay Jones yet again this week. Before we can pivot into the must-sit wide receivers, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our sponsor over at BetMGM. Now, if you're a brand new user to BetMGM, make sure you click on the link in the video description down below or in the pinned comment to activate this offer. I'm going to throw it onto the screen right now. Once you sign up, all you're going to do is navigate to the top of the screen and go to soccer, and you're going to place a $10 wager on any pre-game moneyline bet on the World Cup. Bet on any team, and as long as a goal is scored during the World Cup, which is guaranteed to happen, then you will receive $200 in free bets. So your bet could lose, it could be a draw in that game, no goals could be scored in that game. As long as there's another goal scored in the World Cup, again, guaranteed to happen, you'll receive $200 in free bets. So please make sure that you take advantage of this offer right now, because it's not going to last forever. It only lasts until December 4th. So please make sure you take advantage of it right now before it is too late and disappears. Again, bet $10 on any World Cup pregame money line, and you'll receive $200 in free bets on BetMGM. Again, make sure you take advantage of this before it disappears. Now we pivot into the must-sit wide receivers, headlined by Diontae Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers, going up against the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. Now, I know what you might be thinking, Nick, Diontae Johnson has been a dud for basically the whole fucking season. And I agree with you. Yet, every single week, I'm looking at other websites' rankings. They have this motherfucker ranked inside the top 32 wide receivers basically every single week. And I know people are going to talk themselves into playing him. They're going to galaxy brain themselves into playing him because the Atlanta Falcons defense sucks ass. They rank 29th in pass defense via DVOA. So people are going to talk themselves into starting him because it is a great matchup. Week 12 up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis in primetime. I don't think this is necessarily that hard of a matchup, and he was the wide receiver 55. 5 receptions on 8 targets for 49 yards. The man hasn't had over 10 half PPR points since week 3. It's week fucking 13, and he's only scored over 10 half PPR points twice, and it was right at the beginning of the year. Again, the matchup's amazing. I understand. The guy keeps getting targets. You want to chase volume. I understand. But he hasn't proved shit this season. He's a great player. He just continues to drop the ball. Pickett keeps throwing to other guys. It is what it is. It is what it is. At this point, you could just cut Diontae Johnson, because unless someone else on the team is getting injured, knock on wood, we don't root for injuries, then that's the only way Diontae Johnson fucking crawls himself into fantasy relevancy. Next up, we move to Adam Thielen of the Minnesota Vikings, going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in Minnesota. Cold like Minnesota. Week 12 versus the New England Patriots in prime time on Thanksgiving. Adam Thielen finally has a great game. 9 receptions on 10 targets for 61 yards and a touchdown. That's great. And I don't necessarily believe that that is a fluke game for Thielen, because Thielen is a lot like Diontae Johnson. Continues to get peppered with targets, but instead of not doing anything all year like Diontae Johnson, Adam Thielen for once showed up. But I feel like this week, up against the Jets defense, he won't be able to get it done. It's really just about the matchup. I don't think the Jets are going... If the Jets get fucked by one receiver on the Vikings, it's not going to be Adam Thielen. If the Jets defense gets sauced up on, it's going to be by Justin Jefferson. The Jets rank 5th in pass DVOA. This matchup is extremely scary, and I know, even through the downward spiral that Thielen has been on, some people have been starting him. And I understand it, right? He's a great player, but this matchup scares the shit out of me. Next up, we move to number 3, Allen Lazard of the Green Bay Packers, going up against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. Week 12 at Philly, wide receiver 79.5 PPR, 2 receptions on 3 targets for 24 4 yards. With the emergence of Christian Watson, Allen Lazard has went from, oh, he's the wide receiver 1 on the team. Oh, he's having some solid games in a row, to now he's in the fucking basement, okay? 3 straight games. In those 3 games, remember, we've been talking about with Christian Watson. Christian Watson was going off. He was having a day. He was having performances that were amazing. And in those games, Lazard has failed to score over 10.5 PPR points, averaging 6 targets per game over that stretch. That is lower than early on in the season. That number is also carried by an 11-target game up against the Titans, because in the other 2 games, he had 3 and 4 targets. So again, I don't necessarily think that Allen Lazard's a bad player. I don't think this is a bad matchup. This is a positive matchup for Lazard. The issue is that if Christian Watson keeps scoring touchdowns, he keeps eating in this offense, then there's not enough room for Allen Lazard to spread his wings, caw-caw, and fucking fly. Randall Cobb's getting targets too. This, again, I like Allen Lazard, the player. I was someone who really enjoyed drafting Allen Lazard early on in the offseason. Like July, I was a big fan of Allen Lazard. But ultimately, now we're in fucking December, basically, and Allen Lazard just isn't it. He just is not it. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below, as well as hit that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. If you have any questions about Week 13, please ask down below in the comment section. And make sure you check out our sponsor of today's video, BetMGM. Again, bet $10 on any World Cup pregame money line. You receive $200 in free bets if your bet wins. I love you guys all. Hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, good boy.